and tangible adaptation support on the ground that is making real impacts to the most vulnerable communities in developing countries. The fund has supported over 165 concrete projects for a total funding over $1.2 billion, benefiting more than 43 million people across 112 countries. The Adaptation Fund is one of the few multilateral funds that provide much-needed 100% grant funding for countries with no requirement for co-funding. The Adaptation Fund's medium strategy for 23-27 presents new opportunities for the eligible parties, including an increased country cap from 10 to 20 US million per country, and strengthening investment in innovation and locally led adaptation. However, the demand for adaptation finance far exceeds available funds. The board's latest report to the CMP registered a pipeline of over $420 million, and the fund still faces significant challenges in securing predictable and sustained financial resources. I take this opportunity, I would like to express my deep appreciation and gratitude to the countries that have pledged new funding to the fund, totaling more than $166 million. However, this mobilization is still below the fund's resource mobilization target for this year, set at $300 million by the board, and we would encourage additional support. Finally, I want to convey that the fund is ready to fully achieve the Paris Agreement goals. We hope the negotiation at this COP, and in particular on Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, will help the fund to be more financially sustainable so that it continues to deliver its support and fulfill its mission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Andrew Kamgo-Fumohu, Director General of African Center of Meteorological Application of Development. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this statement presents the activities and achievements as well as challenges and way forward to operationalize early warning systems in Africa. It is also proposing some areas of intervention to prioritize the implementation of the Loss and Damage Fund. This year, 2023, in the State of Climate for Africa, appears to be among the first few years with the highest number of extremely hot days in the record since 1950. We are all aware of the storm in the Mediterranean Sea with significant impact in Libya, the longest-lasting cyclone Freddy in the Southwest Indian Ocean and Southern Africa, and with the ongoing El Nino, we are seeing floods in Eastern Africa, particularly Somalia, and drought over Southern Africa. The African Center of Applications provide climate information and is the advisory center for all the continent. And we particularly value the support provided by our partners, the African Union and the World Meteorological Organization, to support Africa in these operations. On the side of the priorities for investment through the Loss and Damage Fund, on one hand, we are promoting the support for ad hoc briefings and debriefings after these extreme events across Africa, involving the disaster risk reduction community and our meteorological services, as well as the supporting centers under the leadership and coordination of the African Center of Meteorological Applications for Development. I thank you all.
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Teresa Mandita Lim, Executive Director of ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or the ASEAN, Center for Biodiversity, or the ACB, expresses its gratitude to the Secretariat and the parties during this COP28 for its admission as an intergovernmental organization observer at sessions of the Conference of the Parties beginning at this historic COP28 here in Dubai. We look forward to more opportunities in contributing to the UNFCCC processes as we take on two of the most pressing issues of our time, climate change and biodiversity loss. The Southeast Asian region is home to more than 25% of the world's known plant and animal species, despite only possessing 3% of the world's surface area. However, it remains to be one of the world's most vulnerable regions to climate change, directly affected by extreme weather events over the past years. Our leaders in the ASEAN recognize that we cannot tackle climate change without the vital services provided by our rich biodiversity and ecosystem health. Healthy species and ecosystems diversity enhances nature's ability to store and sequester carbon and acts as our natural defense against climate change-related impacts. A well-balanced ecosystem regulates climate, reduces the risk of pandemics, and provides water and food security. We join the ASEAN member states in calling for support to adaptation and resilience through nature-based solutions that protect vulnerable groups. We also highlight ongoing efforts on forest protection and rehabilitation as part of our climate action, as mentioned by Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam in their high-level statements. Our interconnected forests, rivers, coastal, mangrove, and marine ecosystems in the ASEAN region require concerted action among our member states as one community to address the common environmental challenges that we face. The ACB stands ready to contribute to the synergy of actions and partnerships in the ASEAN region and across other regions and sub-regions to optimize available resources and efforts in addressing the intertwined crisis of climate change and biodiversity loss. And so together, we can move forward towards a more sustainable and resilient future where no one is left behind. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Madam. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Amit Prati, Director General of Coalition for Disaster Resilience Infrastructure. Sir, you have the floor.
Respected President, Excellencies, disasters are becoming more frequent and severe. Climate vulnerabilities are rising. As we seek to accelerate progress towards the SDGs, CDRI's latest research warns that up to 14% of global GDP could be lost every year from risks related to natural hazards and climate change. At COP28 and through the global stocktake, we must act to address potential climate risks and unlock investment in resilient, inclusive infrastructure. Trillions of dollars will be required annually by 2050, much of it in low and middle income countries. It is imperative we act by 1, classifying risk and exposure data as a public good, and at COP28, CDRI launched the first public risk model for infrastructure assets covering geological and climate-related hazards for the entire planet. Enhancing infrastructure governance through risk-informed policies, regulatory frameworks, and localized solutions, particularly in urban areas that are increasingly affected by extreme heat, flooding, and water scarcity, is much needed. 3, committing public sector funding to identify resilience dividends and de-risk private investments in resilient infrastructure projects. 4, providing technical assistance and technology transfer to the most vulnerable nations. CDRI is supporting 13 island states through the Infrastructure for Resilience Island States initiative and is committed to expanding support to SIDS to enhance infrastructure resilience and future prosperity. 5, enabling knowledge sharing, building capacities, and fostering collaboration. A digital platform for exchange learning and collaboration, DRI Connect, was launched at COP by CDRI. Excellencies, COP28 can be a turning point in progress on the global goal on adaptation. The call, "Leave No One Behind," underscores our opportunity to enhance disaster and climate-resilient infrastructure and protect the lives and livelihoods, especially for those most at risk. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to welcome Sir Haya Rossi Uriola Quizos, Secretary Executive, Comisium Santinamicoia di Amibatia Desarrollo. Sir, you have the floor.
Something difficult. President, Excellencies, los países de la Comisión Centroamericana de Ambiente.
We, the member states of the Central American Commission on Environment and Development, Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, and the Dominican Republic, present ourselves to the world as a region unique for its natural wealth and multiculturalism, one that makes a significant contribution to humanity. We are a region with a population of over 61 million people. Our great forests house 12% of the world's biodiversity, and we are also home to the second largest coral reef system in the world, the Mesoamerican Barrier Reef. Nonetheless, our countries are located in one of the most climate vulnerable regions as well. We are deeply concerned about the frequency and magnitude of extreme weather events associated with climate variability and change in the region. This state of affairs, the aforementioned phenomena, have substantial and serious impacts on the livelihoods of the most vulnerable populations, damaging and affecting crucial ecosystems and social and productive infrastructure in our countries. The member countries of the CCAD also wish to highlight the institutional and economic efforts that we have undertaken in the implementation of our nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, derived from the Paris Agreement, and also draw attention to the challenges that, as developing countries, we face in terms of financing for the fulfillment of said climate action. We reiterate an urgent call to developed countries, the main emitters and those chiefly responsible for the global climate crisis, to fulfill their commitments, accelerating climate action in accordance with the Glasgow Climate Pact and the agreements reached at Sharm el-Sheikh. We also consider it necessary to review and adjust the global climate financing architecture and to double the resources earmarked for adaptation. We reaffirm the urgent need to operationalize as soon as possible the Loss and Damage Fund and to strengthen the Santiago network. We recognize the contributions to capitalize said fund that were initially announced at this COP28, but issue an urgent call to increase financial commitments to levels that genuinely encompass all vulnerable regions, such as our own regions, which already face enormous and recurring loss and damage. Equitable access to these resources should prioritize principles of fairness, common but differentiated responsibilities, and ensure accessibility and quality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your understanding. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Charlie Andrew Velayudo Marimoto, Secretary General of Commission the ASEAN Indian. So you have the floor.
Merci. La COI remercie la présidence
The IOC thanks the Dubai presidency of COP28
face à la politique crise
on the climate.
qui est nécessaire et
In the face of the climate crisis, we need to focus on education, training, and innovation, particularly blue innovation. Energy sobriety combined with responsible means of production, means that are carried out in accordance with a circular approach. When it comes to the sustainable preservation of essential ecosystems such as grasslands and wetlands and mangroves, this is absolutely critical. It is also important to ensure growth in scientific research to support decision-making and make nature-sensitive technological innovations available. In order to meet the challenges that lay ahead and reconnect with justice in a tangible manner, we must learn the greatest lesson from nature, which is that the organisms that best resist crisis situations are those that cooperate. When it comes to mitigation and adaptation, efforts must continue in that regard, but we must above all strengthen, amplify and multiply actions to deal with the causes of climate change. This requires us to rethink development models and to do things differently. For our islands, this requires differentiated treatment through easier access to climate financing, including for high-income island states, in accordance with the principle of leaving no one behind. This also requires enhancing their capabilities in the development and implementation of public policy policies and climate projects. Science research and vocational training geared towards the oceans are tools for massive construction and are critical to our survival. As the common good that regulates our Earth system, the oceans must be a global priority. We are responsible for the disasters that are coming and for the collective failure to meet our commitments to limit the average rise in temperature. We are equally responsible for the ensuing runaway effect, as the IPC has noted. Will we have the wisdom, humility and strength to undertake what is necessary?
Merci.
We are committed to doing the necessary. What about you?
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Jose Daniel Talent, Executive Director of Commission for Environmental Cooperation. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is with great urgency and the utmost sense of responsibility that the North American Commission for Environmental Cooperation, representing the countries of Canada, Mexico, and the United States, calls on every person in our global society to use whatever means and resources at their disposal to aggressively tackle the triple planetary crisis of climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. The science is very clear and undeniable. The Earth is warming too fast and will soon pass 1.5 degrees Celsius, triggering destructive and irreversible climate and ecosystem tipping points. Each tenth of a degree matters, as warming leads to further ecosystem collapse and increased human suffering, as well as to trillions of dollars of economic impact. The clock is ticking and time is not on our side. Achieving a net zero economy by 2050, while important, is not enough. We must also immediately and aggressively reduce the emission of the most potent climate superpollutants, including methane, black carbon, tropospheric ozone, and HFCs. And we must do this by 2030. Time is running out. We must also employ avoided warming strategies to cool our environment, such as introducing shade and reflective surfaces to ward off heat in extremely hot environments. And we must build back biodiversity to help Mother Nature. We need to do this by engaging Indigenous communities and taking consideration of traditional ecological knowledge. We need to do this while reversing patterns of environmental injustice with respect to how environmental benefits and burdens have been unfairly shared in the past. And we need to do this while engaging youth and considering all vulnerable communities. May this be a decade of ambition and aggressive collective action. Solutions are within our reach. We simply need to implement them. North America is aligned on 1.5. May we be all guided by the love of nature, humanity, and collective well-being. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mohammed Nafis Zakaria, Executive Director of Commission on Science and Technology for Sustainable Development in the South. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. Honorable Chair and distinguished delegates, escalating climate crisis has been adversely affecting our planet. Different regions experience different manifestations of climate change, from frequent floods of biblical proportions to droughts, forest fires to smog, and from unpredictable weather patterns to mind-boggling temperature swings. The Global South countries that COP28 represents, particularly the Indus Basin states, are grappling with the consequences of climate change. The heat impact has been exacerbating the challenges for those 300 million people that inhabit the Indus Basin. The glaciers are fast melting. In the long run, the security risks intrinsically linked to the stress on resources may lead to conflicts between the states. It warrants urgent action. This situation should provide food for thought to the world leaders, the national policymakers, and scientists. COP28, with dedicated Center of Climate Change and Sustainability with membership of 20 countries and 24 institutes, organizes programs for awareness, capacity building, policy initiatives, and R&D under its International Thematic Research Group on Climate Change. We need to sincerely identify those activities that constantly cause damage to the environment but remain evasive. For instance, militaries contribute 5.5% to greenhouse gases emissions. Unfortunately, they were exempted for accountability from Kyoto and Paris agreements. While industrial activities have degraded environment over decades, wars destroy environment instantly on much larger scale. An impact assessment of the war's military exercises need to be carried out. How effectively COP process has helped in the last 28 years in compensating and enabling the countries least responsible for the environmental damage needs a critical view. However, a measure of efforts for developing states is also important. COP28 commitment has to be steadfast, inclusive, and tangible in action. Intergovernmental organizations like COMSETs could assist. The establishment of loss and damage fund on day one is commendable. However, the proof is in the pudding. Technologically advanced and economically powerful nations need to share greater responsibility on the basis of morality. Half-hearted measures are not tenable. Leveraging our collective strength under a new era of climate diplomacy is a must to ensure a shared promising future, especially for those in the global south. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It's my pleasure to welcome the Right Honourable Patricia Janet Baroness, Scholar of Arthur KC, Secretary General of the Commonwealth Secretariat. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies, every achievement in human history has been enabled by the Earth's stable climate. The breakdown of that stability with extremes of heat, drought, storms, floods, and fires, the like of which we have never seen, and challenges for humanity, the like of which we have never known, is our responsibility. We look and are locked in a war with the planet we all share, with devastating consequences for our people, prosperity, peace, and prospects. As a direct result, the most vulnerable nations in the Commonwealth and across the world face being consumed by rising seas or drowned by debt. Since 1989, Commonwealth leaders have called for global action. Our small states have been at the forefront of the loss and damage breakthrough. And today, their calls reverberate with an urgency which cannot be ignored. Decisive action for systems transformation rooted in the sharpest honesty about where we are, where we need to be, and how we get there is the only way forward. We must reduce emissions and accelerate the energy transition. We must restore the natural world, ocean, land, and air, because our precious planet is our greatest asset and ally. And donors must keep their climate finance promises to the vulnerable, investing in the health of our planet and all our peoples. If we can achieve this, and our history shows us that we are capable of the most extraordinary things, then there is still just enough time, not only to deliver humanity from the worst effects of climate change, but to catalyze a brighter, more sustainable future for everyone everywhere. It falls to us, here and now, to make that happen, and there is no time left to waste. And I thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Mohammed Hamel, Secretary General of Gas Exporting Countries Forum. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is with profound admiration that I extend my congratulations to the United Arab Emirates, a key member of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum, for their exemplary hosting of COP28. Natural gas, the cleanest of hydrocarbons, currently fulfills 23% of the world's primary energy needs. It plays a crucial role in driving the economy, enhancing living standards, reducing household pollution, improving air quality in megacities, and addressing climate change. Natural gas is an indispensable ally for renewables, providing the necessary flexibility to ensure a steady electricity supply, especially when renewable sources are intermittent or when drought restricts hydropower production. Moreover, natural gas is essential for global food security, being the main feedstock in nitrogen-based fertilizers production. It also leads the transition to the hydrogen economy, offering a pathway to reduce emissions in hard-to-abate sectors. Key to enhancing the environmental profile of natural gas are efforts to enhance operational and energy efficiency, reduce gas flaring and methane emissions, and upscale carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology. As the world's population grows, the economy expands, and human living conditions improve, the world will need more natural gas, not less. Our member countries are committed to harnessing natural gas resources and deploying cleaner technologies efficiently and responsibly, responding to world's growing energy needs. COP28 should facilitate financing for natural gas projects and the scaling up of cleaner technologies such as carbon capture, utilization, and storage. This is crucial for a just, inclusive, and orderly energy transitions that satisfy the needs of sustainable development, energy security, and energy affordability. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Stephen Schulmitz, Executive Director of Global Crop Diversity Trust. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. On 14th November this year, the Global Crop Diversity Trust and the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture hosted the Global Crop Diversity Summit in Berlin. Among other things, the summit served to prepare for the COP28 climate conference. On behalf of the summit, I will present the key findings of the importance of crop diversity for climate change mitigation and adaptation to the COP28 and its negotiators. We must urgently transform our agri-food systems if we are to resolve the linked overlapping crisis of food and nutrition insecurity, climate change, and loss of biodiversity that humanity faces. Plant diversity is at the heart of food systems transformation. Plant diversity is a key to climate adaptation and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Gene banks play a pivotal role in agri-food systems transformation. Gene banks are repositories of solution, innovation, and resilience. Gene banks can empower breeders and scientists worldwide to develop climate-resilient, nutritious, and high-yielding crop varieties, and farmers to diversify their production landscapes. Gene banks cannot fulfill their transformative potential by working in isolation. They must work towards a global gene bank partnership. We call on all gene banks to work more closely together. Many gene banks around the world are severely underfunded. To empower gene banks to contribute to and effect meaningful change in agri-food systems, sufficiently guaranteed financial resources are crucial. By investing adequately in gene banks, we transform agri-food systems to be more productive, healthy, resilient, sustainable, and equitable for the benefit of all of humanity and of our planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Eliane Balijoro, Director General of International Center for Research in Agroforestry. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you. We need a new vision for Earth. Forests, trees, agroforestry can deliver 1/3 of the climate solution, alongside critical reductions in fossil fuel use. They play a crucial role in creating a nature-positive, carbon-negative future. At C4ICRAF, we have decades of research and proven solutions on forests, trees, and agroforestry. Restoring degraded land through agroforestry can reduce soil erosion by 50%, increase soil carbon by 21%, and if implemented on a large scale, increase food security for 1.3 billion people. Every dollar invested in restoring land provides an estimated return of $7 to $30 US dollars in economic benefits, including carbon sequestration, water quality, food production, and health. It's a win for countries and businesses focused on long-term resilience, profitability, and growth. C4ICRAF works with national governments and partners at all levels in Africa, Asia, and Latin America to jointly develop tools, knowledge, options, and capacity needed to implement sustainable solutions successfully. We call for science-informed, equitable investments in forests and trees on farm, tree commodities, and soil and land health for climate adaptation and mitigation, biodiversity, and food nutrition and security. Reversing land degradation and strengthening food systems through agriculture with trees. Equitable, sustainable, transparent private sector investment in agricultural and forested landscapes, and a commitment to the equity and rights of smallholders, indigenous peoples, and local communities as key partners, and linking traditional knowledge with the latest science-based technologies and solutions. An investment in trees and land health can deliver a triple bottom win of development and adaptation and mitigation, while improving our natural resources base and partner with us for a healthy and just Earth.
Thank you, Madam. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Sham Sakuru, Executive Director of International Tropical Timber Organization. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, respected Presidency, Your Excellencies, Honourable Ministers and distinguished delegates. The International Tropical Timber Organization, established in 1986, is committed to catalyzing sustainable tropical forest management. Through strategic partnerships with governments, private sector and civil society, we empower our 76 members and local communities to sustainably manage and benefit from forests with a special focus on women. The centrality of tropical forests for both climate mitigation and adaptation cannot be overstated. If we continue disincentivizing forest conservation, we will never succeed in limiting the damage caused by climate change and changing land use. Sustainably managed tropical forests hold essential nature-based solutions and should be vigorously pursued. They produce wood and non-wood forest products, act as a vast carbon sink, protect biodiversity, soil and water, filter the air, prevent land degradation and desertification, and reduce the risk of floods, droughts, and other disasters. Sustainable forest management ensures that forest carbon stocks are maintained long-term by avoiding degradation. Timber and wood is one of the most environmentally friendly materials we have. Sustainable harvesting of forests is not deforestation, and the sustainable use of wood products increases global carbon storage. Generating sustainable revenue from forests will ensure that forests are retained and not fall victim to other competing land uses. To fight climate change and transform our economies, we need to urgently invest in sustainable tropical forest management. We aim for integrated management that sequesters and stores carbon, nurtures thriving ecosystems, and enables sustainable use, contributing to carbon-neutral and more circular bioeconomies. Tropical forests offer a vital pathway towards a climate-resilient future. The ITTO will continue advancing sustainable tropical forest management for climate change mitigation, adaptation, and conservation of biodiversity. We urge all stakeholders to work with us in championing sustainable tropical forest management and to accelerate investment in them. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Greta Aguilar Rojas, Director General of International Union for Conservation of Nature. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, we humans depend on nature for our own survival, but we are destroying it at an unprecedented rate. Species, forests, the ocean, and land are suffering because of our actions. Nature is kind and has provided ecosystem services for millennia, and continues to be a key ally to mitigate and adapt to climate change. We need to urgently act now to keep the 1.5 goal alive. The global stocktake must result in a strong and clear decision that leads to more ambitious nationally determined contributions in 2025. We have three main expectations from it. First, the global stocktake must drive rapid and deep greenhouse gas emissions cuts across all sectors of the global economy. This must include the time-bound phase-out of all fossil fuels within a framework that ensures a just transition. Second, it should clearly recognize the valuable role of healthy ecosystems in providing effective nature-based solutions for both adaptation and mitigation, the links between the climate change and biodiversity loss crisis, and the need to greater operational synergies across all three Rio Conventions. Finally, it should deliver a scale-up global climate finance across the entire continuum of mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage. An increased proportion of these should be made directly accessible to the indigenous peoples and local communities. The well-being of humanity depends on the well-being of our planet. We must do everything in our power to protect it. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Mark Smith, Director General of International Water Management Institute. Sir, you have the floor.
Mr. President, Excellencies, picture a world where everyone, regardless of where they live, has enough to eat and access to clean water. Imagine farmers working smarter, not harder, and using less water to grow more food. Imagine a future in a decarbonizing world where conserving nature reinforces how communities withstand floods and droughts. Everyone gathered at COP wants to create such a just and sustainable world. And by building water-resilient food systems, we can do precisely that, take care of our planet while helping people thrive. This is how we help economies withstand a future of intensifying water shocks and also protect our precious water resources. The Earth's water and food systems are inextricably linked. Water nourishes food systems, and agriculture uses 70% of water withdrawals globally. Yet water risks can break food systems. Currently, global hunger impacts over 820 million people, and every increment of warming puts more people at risk of hunger because of water insecurity. Representing the International Water Management Institute, IMI, the CGIAR's Water Research Centre working across Africa and Asia, today I urge us to put water and food at the centre of climate plans, strategies and finance. All of us, no matter our role, are part of keeping water flowing and food growing. IMI puts water system science to work for climate action. At COP28, we're working with parties to the Convention, providing data, evidence and trusted advice to guide their decisions and building partnerships for impact. Let's continue working together so food and water are part of climate resilience, because a food-secure future is only possible in a water-secure world. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Max Torrijos Cervantes, Secretary General of International Youth Organization for Ibero-America. Sir, you have the floor.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Se viene se lidera desde las soluciones.
The world of the future will be one that is led and shaped by solutions. It's a great honor to be participating at this historic conference of the United Nations here in Dubai, and to do so representing the historic generation from which I hail, a generation which has known how to combine protest with purpose. Young people have raised their voices. They've taken to the street to protest against social and environmental shortcomings and gaps that are the direct daily experience of them. But also, more importantly, they've raised their voice at this COP, bringing the strength of their ideas with disruptive ideas and innovative solutions that take the form of projects, initiatives and programs. And now we need these young people and their calls, their cries, their voices to be translated into government commitment and business solutions that will feed into concrete actions in the spheres of climate finance, adaptation, mitigation and climate education. And it's against that backdrop that we issue a call, an urgent call for the rapid implementation of the climate commitments that have been made in all the meetings that we've had at this COP28. Fine words have been spoken. Now it is time for action. We need sustainability certificates that are tied to results. We need debt swaps that are nature-based. We need payments for ecosystem services. We need carbon markets, incentive for private investment, and technology transfer. Merely setting goals and targets is not enough. We need, as I've said, to translate all of this into tangible, immediate action. The dizzying pace and impact of climate change require an immediate and effective response. So let's come together, let's ramp up and accelerate efforts to shift from this old system of competition to a new system of cooperation, a new system in which all sectors, all stakeholders, all players can come together and share a single voice of commitment, dedication and compromise. Young people have already played their role. They're stepping forward with the determination and vision to pursue this environmental transition. They've set aside griping about problems and focused to proactively seeking solutions. And now it's our turn. Let's shift towards solutions making reality, showing leadership. We need to connect ideas with resources and to action. That's what we've been doing as the International Organization for Young People. We've been pursuing environmental cooperation. We also need, as international organizations, to put forward a new youth agenda that recognizes young people as active agents of transformation, as the guardians of the environment and our future guardians of environmental democracy, and also strategic players and actors in our economic, political, social and environmental action. Ladies and gentlemen, the world of the future will be solutions-led, solution-based. Everything that we say in Dubai needs to become reality. Our aspirations can and must be made real. We need to continue seeking solutions and turning them into reality to change the world for a better and brighter one. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Tulia Axon, President of Interparliamentary Union. Excellency, you have the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, as President of the Interparliamentary Union, I am honored to share key outcomes from the joint IPU and Federal National Council parliamentary meeting held at COP28. This was the first ever parliamentary meeting held within the COP Green Zone and contributes to solidifying the recognition of parliaments as key players in the global climate discourse and efforts. We hope that this is the first of a practice that will be consolidated in the future COPs, and we thank COP28 and the UAE for their support. By convening in the Green Zone, we underscored the indispensable role that parliaments play in shaping policies, advocating for change, overseeing implementation of commitments made, and ensuring that the voices of constituents are heard. With nearly 500 participants from 60 countries, discussions focused on urgent climate challenges such as scaling up adaptation efforts, financing and sustaining the loss and damage mechanisms. A constant focus remained on the most vulnerable nations, communities and groups on the front lines of climate change and the urgent need to support them. An additional meeting we held in the COP Blue Zone highlighted the leadership of women and young parliamentarians in climate action, showcasing their often under-recognized role. Given the clear deviation from the Paris Agreement goals, parliamentarians doubled down on their commitment to climate action.
The call for mid-course corrections coming from the Stocktake exercise was viewed as an acknowledgement of the dynamic nature of our climate challenges and a further opportunity to realign global efforts with the Paris Agreement. Parliamentarians are acutely aware that climate action does not end with the conclusion of COP28. The parliamentary outcome document adopted by the meeting serves as a solid roadmap for action and calls on parliaments to encourage ambitious national determined contributions, promote international cooperation, and ensure equitable climate strategies. I express gratitude to the UAE and FNC for hosting COP28 and the parliamentary meeting. Their commitment to inclusivity reflects a commendable step forward in addressing climate challenges with a participatory approach, crucial for effectively responding to the global Stocktake outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Karen Ellemann-Kloger, Secretary General of Nordic Council of Ministers. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies, the Nordic region has a common vision to become the most sustainable and integrated region by 2030. And this is a vision of a climate-neutral Nordic society that is not just about emission reductions and technologies. We also share a vision about our health, our food systems, cohesion, respect and inclusiveness of local communities and populations. The Nordics have a special responsibility as we are well positioned to reach climate neutrality. However, we need to speed up the green transition. Here at COP28, we want to generate dialogues on what climate-neutral societies look like and what solutions are needed and available today. The Nordic countries are committed to reducing our carbon footprints. We are committed to increasing fossil-free and renewable energy significantly by 2030. We want a global phase-out of unabated fossil fuels and fossil fuel subsidies. This year's COP has highlighted the role of healthy and sustainable food system for climate action. The Nordics can contribute with our experience to ensure a shift to sustainable food systems that provide healthy food for all. The transition towards climate-neutral societies needs to be inclusive and just for all. So we stand ready to work with you all to catalyze and accelerate the change needed. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, collaboration and not division is the key to meet and address the challenges of climate change. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen, and let's work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Nabil Ben Hacher, Executive Secretary of Observation du Sahara et du Sahel. Sir, you have the floor.
Monsieur le Président,
President, honourable delegates, ladies and gentlemen.
It is
the mission of the OSS, the Sahel and Sahara Observatory, to support countries and organisations on the African continent in the sustainable management of their natural resources, bearing in mind the context of the particularly adverse climate change impacts. Our 2030 strategy was formulated to align with the global development agendas, in particular the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations and the 2063 Agenda of the African Union for the Africa we want. In close cooperation with our international, regional and national partners, we support African countries in their efforts to adapt to the effects of climate change. We equally support them in the implementation of their nationally determined contributions. Our expertise and know-how are geared towards enhancing the resilience of ecosystems and populations, as well as towards the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and improving carbon sequestration. The double accreditation of the OSS from the Green Climate Fund and the Adaptation Fund has made way for the mobilization of the requisite financial resources for the implementation of innovative projects. Here, in line with a bottom-up approach, the involvement of different actors and stakeholders will ensure the scale-up of these projects. We are also establishing monitoring tools as well as a platform for self-evaluation and for information sharing. We are developing early warning systems for better risk management and more informed decision-making. As an example, at present, we are developing cartographic products on the change in land tenure, soil, organic carbon, primary production, as well as ecosystem services. These cartographic products cover the entire continent with high-resolution data. The ensuing analyses from this data will be presented to the International Conference on Land Degradation to be held in June 2024. Thus, the OSS is striving to forge synergies between the three conventions. It restates its commitment to ensuring that it will continue with this work and intensify its efforts to achieve the goals that the international community has set. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Haytham Al-Ghaid, Secretary General of Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished delegates, it's a pleasure and honor to deliver these remarks on behalf of His Excellency Haytham Al-Ghaid, the Secretary General of OPEC, in one of our OPEC member countries, the United Arab Emirates. Holding the COP28 here underscores the UAE's role in climate leaders as a climate leader and its capabilities in the realm of providing energy. The interwoven nature of reducing emission and energy security is now rightfully at the forefront of the global discussion about the energy transition pathways, and for this, we need all energies approach. Otherwise, the world cannot meet rising energy demand, maintain energy security, while ensuring affordable universal energy access. The Paris Agreement also focuses on reducing emissions rather than choosing certain energy sources. We also need all people's approach, as the capacities, the national circumstances, and the development priorities of all countries must be taken into account to ensure that no one is left behind. We also need all technologies approach, as the world needs to develop and finance all forms of technologies to help reduce emission while meeting the demand. Technological innovations is a key focus at OPEC. It is why our member countries have been investing heavily on hydrogen projects, CCUS, CCS, and DAC facilities, and the circular carbon economy and renewables. I hope that you had visited the OPEC pavilion here at the COP28 to see this firsthand. The oil industry is also taking a proactive approach here at the COP28, with 50 oil companies representing nearly half of the global production, including many of our member countries at OPEC, pledging to reach near zero methane emission and end routine flaring in their operations by 2030. Ultimately, this all energy, all people, and all technologies approach need to be in adherence to the principles of equity and common but differentiated responsibilities. This means ensuring that first global stocktake under the Paris Agreement concludes with equitable and inclusive outcome. It needs to ensure that the developed countries fulfill their long overdue climate finance commitments, and that funding arrangements for loss and damage enable adequate and accessible finance that does not increase liabilities. There is no single solution or path to achieve a sustainable energy future. We need realistic approaches to tackle emission, one that enable economic growth, help eradicate poverty, and increase resilience at the same time. In this respect, I wish COP28 every success in going down the history as the COP of unity, action, and delivery. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Fiona Henry, Secretary General, Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Mr. President, Excellencies, fellow citizens of our one and only blue planet, we have heard the strong voices and advocacy of our Pacific leaders, and I stand before you today to amplify and reaffirm their message. The 1.5-degree goal in the Paris Agreement represents a critical threshold in our fight for survival. The urgency of this situation is why our members initiated the Port Vila call for a just transition to a fossil fuel-free Pacific. In addition, the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent reflects our collective determination to address our most pressing challenges. Our leaders' recent declaration on statehood is a powerful statement of our sovereignty and resilience in the face of adversity. On reflection, we and our future generations should not pay the price for the comfort and convenience of the bigger developed emitters of today. We therefore demand urgent climate action and commitments now. Mr. President, the Pacific Resilience Facility, recently endorsed by Pacific leaders, represents our commitment to securing our future. I wish to thank Saudi Arabia and Australia for their generous commitments to the facility, and we invite support from other partners to make the facility a success in order to give us a fighting chance. In conclusion, our commitment to a sustainable, just and resilient future is unwavering. A fossil fuel-free future, the 2050 strategy, the Statehood Declaration and the Pacific Resilience Facility are all interconnected threads in the tapestry of our shared vision for a world where the 1.5-degree pathway is safeguarded. Yes, the 1.5 degrees is the answer to the climate crisis, but we cannot do it alone. So please join us so we can act together now. I thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Inam Mayara, President of Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, sir. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Sahab al-Ma'ali wa-Sa'ada.
In the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful, Your Excellencies, allow me at the outset to deliver this statement on behalf of 31 members of the Mediterranean Sea Parliaments. We would like to bring to your attention the severity of the climate change and its impact on the region and the Gulf. For instance, the temperature in the Mediterranean Sea basin is increasing by 20% more than the increase in other countries of the world. We are today asking the COP to achieve more ambitious outcomes and results. We need a serious commitment. We need to increase our efforts. We need to increase climate finance, and we welcome in this regard the decision about operationalizing the loss and damage fund. And we also call for more efforts towards a just transition. We were very serious when we said that we will not accept statements that were not serious and strict. We will cooperate with the Euro-Mediterranean Forum in order to have a parliamentarian assembly or gathering in the Mediterranean Sea and the Gulf region for renewable energy. Our diplomacy is working at the international level to find solutions to conflicts, namely when it comes to increasing efforts to limit climate change and environmental change. Together, we will seek to see our governments respecting and implementing the decisions. Our statements should have an impact on the ground and not remain on paper.
It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Alenka Simakali, Secretary General, Permanent Secretariat of the Alpine Convention. Madam, you have the floor.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I extend my gratitude to the United Arab Emirates COP presidency and the UNFCCC Secretariat for their effort and commitment in organizing this crucial climate conference. Transnational cooperation lies at the heart of our collective response to the climate crisis. It is the driving force behind both the Alpine Convention and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The Alpine Convention, a treaty between the 8 Alpine countries and the European Union, born out of a shared vision in 1991, holds a singular objective: protection and sustainable development of the European Alps. Mountains are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. They experience faster and larger temperature rises and face an increased threat of natural disasters. Yet, their significance extends far beyond their peaks. Sustainable water management in the mountains, for instance, is essential to prevent droughts or floods in the downstream regions. I find encouragement in the rich program of events dedicated to the mountains during this COP, particularly in these days as we celebrate the International Mountain Day. Allow me to highlight the commitment of the current Slovenian presidency of the Alpine Convention in the field of climate change, placing a priority on climate change education in Alpine schools. Our exchanges reveal a high level of awareness and competence among educators and also young generations, showcasing their goodwill towards a sustainable future. Education as an investment in the future is paramount. COP28 must not only be a forum for dialogue, but a beacon of hope for our youth. It is our responsibility to convey a clear message that parties are taking urgent and decisive actions to achieve mitigation goals and reinforce adaptation efforts. Let us leave here with a renewed commitment to safeguard our precious mountains and the generations that will inherit them. Thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Stefania Nawada, Director General of Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program. Sir, you have the floor.
Mr. President, Excellencies, I thank our hosts for the wonderful hospitality and acknowledge the tireless work of the Secretariat. SPREP is the Pacific's Intergovernmental Environment Organization, established 30 years ago by and for Pacific small island developing states. For our members, climate change is an existential threat. Pacific leaders have declared our region under a state of climate emergency. We again come to COP with a loud and clear clarion call to keep within 1.5 to stay alive. We can still limit warming below 1.5 degrees, provided global greenhouse gas emissions peak before 2025 and be halved by 2030. This is the hope we are holding on to and calling for all to make a reality through a global stocktake that facilitates the course correction necessary to keep below 1.5 degrees. It must include a phase-out of fossil fuels and an end to fossil fuel subsidies in line with the principles and provisions of the Paris Agreement. We need to triple global renewable energy capacity by 2030. Developed countries must deliver on their commitment to the 100 billion climate financing goal. The new collective quantified goal must ensure adequate financing to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. The ocean is the world's largest sink, absorbing a third of greenhouse gas emissions. The Pacific Ocean is the largest and only sustainably managed tuna fisheries in the world, vital to global food security, but is at risk from climate change. It is ironic, verging on the ridiculous, that there continues to be resistance to the formal inclusion of the ocean nexus within the Convention. This must change. We greatly appreciate the establishment of the Loss and Damage Fund and look forward to the governance arrangements that will ensure it meets the special circumstances of SIDS. I end by again urging parties to take all actions necessary to accelerate climate action. For this COP to be a success, it must result in a global stocktake process that delivers the course correction needed to keep to 1.5 to stay alive. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Rokia Hatton, Director General of South Asia Cooperative Environment Program. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. As Director General of the South Asia Cooperative Environment Program, I extend heartfelt thanks to the United Arab Emirates government for hosting this globally significant conference during these pivotal times. Mr. President, SACEP, founded in 1982 by South Asian governments, leads environmental and climate efforts. It facilitates policy formulation, planning, capacity development, and awareness across the region, serving as a vital platform for discussions among its 8 member states. South Asia, home of 1.96 billion people, is highly vulnerable to climate change. Resilience on agriculture and natural resources intensifies the impact of events like floods and droughts, making the region one of the most at risk globally. In April 2023, Dhaka, Bangladesh, recorded the highest maximum temperature in decades at 40.6 degrees Celsius, while several cities of northern and eastern India experienced temperatures exceeding 44 degrees Celsius in the same month. Pakistan faced a prolonged heat wave from March to June, while Bhutan witnessed flash floods and underscoring the imperative for proactive climate measures. SACEP embraces COP28's adoption of the Loss and Damages Fund, acknowledging the pressing needs of South Asian countries unequally affected by the crisis despite being least responsible. Mr. President, South Asia commits to ambitious climate action, uniting governments, business, cities, and international cooperation for success in clean energy and resilience. SACEP commends member states' visionary moves, Sri Lanka's launch to the Climate Justice Forum to gather support for nations vulnerable of climate change disasters, and India's offer to host COP33 in 2028, coupled with the proposal for the Pro-Planet Green Credits initiatives. SACEP stays devoted to collaborating with member countries, unwavering in fulfilling UN framework for climate change obligations. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Didier Colomb, Director General of Institut International du Freud. Sir, you have the floor.
Mesdames et messieurs les délégués,
ladies and gentlemen, delegates, the refrigeration sector, which includes the cold chain for food and health products, air conditioning, cryogenics, and heat pumps, is now recognized within the United Nations as a development priority, given its benefits to human life, and also as an environmental priority, given its impact on climate change, which go beyond the effect on the stratospheric ozone layer. We welcome the Global Cooling Pledge. This year, the International Institute of Refrigeration, the IIR, is sharing a pavilion with the various programs and agencies of the United Nations and various other public and private players. The aim of this shared pavilion is to work collectively to promote sustainable refrigeration throughout the world, with workshops covering a wide range of topics available in said pavilion. The meeting of intergovernmental bodies, including the IIR, public institutions, associations, and other companies, shows the importance of the actions that need to be taken. It is essential that each country draw up national cooling plans, including heat pumps, plans that will be aimed at drastically reducing the use of fluorinated gases, as well as bringing down the energy consumption of the equipment used, while at the same time ensuring an increase in refrigeration equipment where it is needed, particularly in developing countries, to prevent post-harvest losses, etc. The IIR is already involved in a number of projects in all continents, setting up cold chains for food, equipping hospitals, installing low-energy air conditioning systems, and defining strategies to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. We are open to participating in other projects beyond our database, publication, and conference activities. Drawing on its network of experts from the world of academia and industry, the IIR is at your disposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Husrev Noziri, Secretary General of Economic Cooperation Organization. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear participants, many developing countries, as the member states of the Economic Cooperation Organization, continue to experience devastating climate impacts without a significant role in their creation. These countries need to improve their adaptation and mitigation capacities, which must be financed indiscriminately. Their financial commitments by developed countries should be completely fulfilled. Energy transition and shift to a low-carbon development model is directly related to the scale of sustainable energy investments and financing. Therefore, access to clean energy investments and technologies on preferential terms is an absolute necessity to achieve zero level. Meanwhile, all decisions on energy transition should be based on a holistic approach to issues of energy and environmental security. We hope the global stocktake could support the Global South to elevate a just transition to the level of the major pillars of climate action. We welcome the breakthrough decision at COP28 on the formal launching of the Loss and Damage Fund as a critical step, and believe that proper capitalization of this fund will address concerns by developing countries. We in the ECO region are confident that desertification as well as sand and dust storms should also be prioritized as climate challenge-related events by this fund in its efforts to provide tailored support to vulnerable developing countries. In such a context, we underscore the importance of a sharper focus on the regional dimension of environmental action by the international community. The intergovernmental regional organizations, such as Economic Cooperation Organization, could definitely bring added value to climate action and serve as efficient platforms. We hope that the international partners, including the UNFCCC, can further work with the eco-region to address challenges and unfold low-carbon, clean energy and sustainable development opportunities. I thank you.
Thank you. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to invite representatives from civil society organizations to address the convention. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Andrew Wilson on behalf of business and industrial non-governmental organizations. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, we've heard much in the media around COP28 about the aims, the ambitions, and the intentions of the private sector when it comes to climate action. I think it's fair to say that conflicting narratives abound. So at the outset, I want to set the record straight, definitively and unambiguously. Global business, as represented here by the International Chamber of Commerce, stands squarely behind the goals of the Paris Agreement, and moreover the goal of limiting global temperature increases to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The many headwinds facing the global economy, from geopolitical fragmentation to rising inflation, have not in any way dimmed the commitment to business when it comes to taking decisive climate action. But those very same headwinds make it all the more important that this conference sends a clear signal to the real economy regarding the commitment of governments to make the policy changes and interventions that will be needed to enable business to go further and faster. In short, we need an outcome to this COP that builds and reinforces market investor confidence that a net zero future is not only essential, but also inevitable. To this end, we call on governments to ensure that this conference delivers three key outcomes. First, a robust and forward-looking global stocktake that provides a basis for significantly upgraded and investable NDCs in line with a 1.5 trajectory. Let me repeat that, in line with a 1.5 degree trajectory. Second, a new action plan to significantly scale the deployment of climate finance, particularly in developing economies. And third, full operationalization of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Mr. Chair, we all know that business as usual is not an option. Global business urges all parties to the convention to seize the opportunity here in Dubai to set the foundations for an inclusive and a prosperous net zero future. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Blessed Chedoni of Demand Climate Justice Now on behalf of environmental NGOs. So you have the floor.
Mr. President, my name is Blessed Chedoni, speaking on behalf of ENGO and Demand for Climate Justice. DCJ's members, such as the 40 million members of India Street Vendors Association, are concerned that civil society's demands in Dubai are being cherry-picked to please the most powerful parties and preferences. An example is the Global Stocktake draft. Many governments are finally supporting language on phasing out fossil fuels, but they must include more than just campaign slogans. Of the 4 options on fossil fuels, not one of them even mentions climate finance or links to means of implementation. Another DCJ member, the Texas Campaign for the Environment, who fights with the frontline communities against the biggest build-out of fossil fuels in the world, demands the mess that the industries have made to be cleaned up, and the communities supported in its own just transition. But in COP28's just transition program, we see more parties trying to actually remove the title of just transition and replace it with only pathways to 1.5 degrees, with no justice at all. That would undermine the point of a program and perpetuate the COP frauds of the past. DCJ won't believe the hype. We won't fall for the hypocrisy. We are watching, and we will warn the world what you are really doing by claiming this climate justice, when we know it is not. For DCJ, climate justice means system change, not climate change. That is what Dubai must deliver. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Manis Nakata and Ms. Anna Laura Sayago on behalf of farmers and agriculture NGOs. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Excellencies, I'm Manis Nakata from Malawi, and with my friend Anna Lola a farmer from Argentina. We are speaking on behalf of the farmers across the world in the farmers' constituency, who are the frontliners of the climate impact. Farmers are extremely disappointed by the outcome of Sharm joint work on agriculture. The failure to agree on the roadmap is the failure to deliver for farmers. We strive every day to mitigate our climate impact and become more resilient to climate change. So we cannot afford to wait any longer, and we need government to move forward and join farmers in their adaptation and mitigation efforts. Climate change must be delivered, and all farmers, by involving them directly in identifying and designing climate change programs, and also targeting them as direct funds recipients. If this scope is supposed to fix climate change, then let's fix it with climate finance for farmers.
The first global stocktake must recognize and enable agriculture and farmer-driven solutions, providing clear guidance to parties on raising credible ambition and action for agriculture, which must be achievable and quantifiable, with clear pathways. Through the active engagement of farmers in the definition of goals and objectives, we must all work together to keep 1.5 alive. COP28 started with the recognition of the connection between sustainable agriculture and climate action. So the COP decision must recognize the important role of farmers in addressing and responding to climate change, whilst ensuring food security for all. We are part of the solution to climate change, and we stand ready to work with you for successful outcomes to COP28. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Sahara-Sahel on behalf of Indigenous peoples' organizations. You have the floor.
President, Excellencies, state leaders, Indigenous leaders. My name is Sahara-Sahel. I am the chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council. I speak on behalf of the Global Indigenous Peoples Caucus. The Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the global average. Compared to pre-industrial times, our region has already warmed 2.2 degrees Celsius. These are not just numbers. Our reality is that as the ice melts, permafrost thaws, and coastal erosion occurs, our livelihoods, rights, and cultures are deeply impacted. These days, the sea ice has not formed in the northernmost part of Greenland, resulting in loss of access to hunting, thus to foods and incomes, putting families and children at great risk. We call on all state parties to take action on the Paris Agreement commitment to keep global temperature increases below 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is the point of no return. If we overshoot it, the disasters we have witnessed this year will only increase, putting human rights, including the rights of Indigenous peoples, at further risk. Dear friends, this COP must be the COP where we not only act on climate tipping points, but also firmly act on democratic tipping points by ensuring a human rights approach, the full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples as in line with the Paris Agreement and as affirmed in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, all of which must be fully reflected in all outcome documents. This includes ensuring a non-conflation of Indigenous peoples with local communities, as well as the distinct recognition and equitable and ethical use of the knowledge of Indigenous peoples. The conflation of local communities and Indigenous peoples devalues our rights as peoples and must be corrected throughout all documents, including in the text on the global stocktake. Lastly, Excellencies, let's make sure that all climate finance initiatives are directly and equitably accessible to Indigenous peoples from all regions of the world. Loss and damage is not only economic and tangible, Intangible values such as our cultures, food and knowledge systems must be included. The knowledge of Indigenous peoples do already contribute to the solutions needed by the world.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Gino van Bagen, Secretary General of ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, on behalf of local governments and municipal authorities. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. As the Secretary General of ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, I speak on behalf of the constituency of local governments and municipal authorities, the LGMA constituency to the UNFCCC. The current climate crisis calls for bold and immediate action. The challenges we face require unwavering dedication, collaborative efforts, and innovative solutions. The first week of COP28 has marked an unprecedented recognition of the need for multi-level climate action. The Local Climate Action Summit, back-to-back to the WECAS, brought more than 500 local leaders to a multi-level dialogue with the COP28 parties. The COP28 presidencies, Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnerships, the CHAMP, was successfully launched with 66 parties endorsing the initiative. And the second ministerial meeting on urbanization and climate change underscored the importance and interest of national governments to collaborate with their other spheres of government. We welcome the operating modalities of the new Loss and Damage Fund to allow for direct access to the subnational level. The LGMA fully supports the COP28 Presidency Champ initiative, welcomes the 66 nations as endorsers to kickstart the enhancement of their NDCs with multi-level actions, and invite other parties to join. We call on all parties to clearly and explicitly state in the global stocktake outcome text the need to multi-level action in the new NDCs towards 2025, and thus support the COP presidency's ambition for multi-level climate action. Our pledge is to fortify multi-level partnerships among all levels of government, foster knowledge exchange and capacity building, and leverage cutting-edge technologies. Together we will chart a course towards carbon neutrality, ensuring that no one is left behind in this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Miraha Kelly on behalf of research and independent NGOs. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to speak at this high-level segment. I am Mariah Russo Kelly from Connecticut State University. I'm also here representing the research and independent NGOs as a member of the steering committee. For years, our research community has been working tirelessly to provide scientific findings and policy guidance in support of these proceedings. A rich and vast body of knowledge and practice grounds our dedication to continued participation here, and we believe in the unified ability of to achieve appropriate decisions based on sound science. We urge parties to consider mitigation goals, in particular with respect to fossil fuels, align with IPCC AR6 and in the race to 1.5. As Ringos, we see a continued need to break down disciplinary silos, to work across sectors, and to put together a coordinated response across land, fresh water, coasts, and the ocean that aligns international policy with the natural world, inclusive of and not separate from humans. As we manifest cross-sectoral communities of action, we encourage parties to consider and use interdisciplinary knowledge based on a systems-based framework of understanding socio-ecological complexities. This can then be the basis for holistic governance that will realize the full suite of benefits that come from a healthy ecosystem across the land, water, ocean continuum. The time has passed for positional negotiating. Now we need to act as one global community for our collective well-being. We understand that consensus decision-making is complicated and often progresses only to the level deemed acceptable by the parties least interested in reform. Nonetheless, there is a call for countries to contribute to making the world a more sustainable place. In conclusion, we assert that there is no research to be done on a dead planet. We have the opportunity to make changes that will change the course of the world. We are here as a diverse research community to support you, and we offer capacity in light of our mutual interest in negotiating a just, fair, and equitable outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Bartolomeo Molete on behalf of trade union NGOs. You have the floor.
Dear Mr. President, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bartolomeo Molete from the South African Trade Union, Congress of South African Trade Unions, representing the global trade union movement. I speak on behalf of the global trade union movement. We represent nearly 200 million affiliated workers to the trade unions in 167 countries. Our members and their communities face profound challenges due to the combination of economic failures and escalating impacts of climate change. The undeniable truth is that these global economic failures have exacerbated the disproportionate burdens borne by working people, subjecting them to extreme working conditions, jeopardizing their livelihoods, and compelling forced migration as a consequence of environmental disruptions. It is imperative that COP28 delivers on its promises. We must advocate for climate policies and legislative frameworks that will prioritize people and safeguard their labor rights, ensuring an equitable and effective transition. We need to be cognizant of the fact that the global trade union movement coined the term just transition. We are astonished at how difficult it is to be here at COP28. This is despite all the promises of transformational change. We see only efforts to avoid action and to water down commitments. At this COP, we need parties to decide on a just transition away from fossil fuels, strong employment guarantees to ensure this possible in our societies, social protection, and adequate skilling and reskilling for workers in the current workforce and the future workforce. Central to our priorities is the urgent need for the adoption of a just transition work program that will bring concrete guidance to the parties to implement just transition policies. We don't need a talk shop. We need a just transition that addresses equity, social justice, mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage, all backed up by developmental climate finance. Fundamental is the respect of labor and human rights, gender equity, and the rights of Indigenous people, as well as inclusion of youth. It is very clear, without a strong labor dimension and focus on international justice and equity, there will be no just transition, and there will not be support for the ambitious climate policies we need. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Fatima Ahmed on behalf of Women and Gender Constituency. You have the floor.
Thank you, Excellency. Good evening. My name is Fatima Ahmed, and I speak with you today on behalf of the Women and Gender Constituency. But first and foremost, I speak to you as a woman from Sudan, a country full of beauty and history, a people with vast hopes and dreams whose lives matter, a country at war, a people facing genocide, women and girls facing deplorable sexual violence and unacceptable levels of humanitarian crisis. There is no climate justice in a militarized world. The destruction in our country is taking lives, eradicating culture, causing generational damage, and causing untold environmental degradation and toxic pollution. This is not our vision, our beautiful and possible vision of a feminist, fossil fuel-free future, a vision of a world centered on care. Every year we come to this COP at the intersection of multiple forms of crisis, facing conflict and famine, accelerated by environmental degradation and instability, facing fossil fuel-driven militarism, speaking up and out to the world, demanding justice to dominant global powers who are indifferent to our suffering, but who should and must heed our leadership, decision makers who continually fail to act in the face of indiscriminate violence, but instead fuel these wars to maintain their power and privilege. With COP28 in the MENA region, I stand here to affirm and uplift MENA women and girls who provide exceptional leadership to protect our environment and fight climate change. We are here demanding the delivery of gender-responsible climate finance, of ambition and real commitment to a just transition, of education and capacity strengthening and real investment in the climate solution led by women in our region. Our voice will only get louder from here. With everything we do here, we join in solidarity with our partners here to demand that we cease all fires now. We demand an end to fossil fuels with just transition, fast, fair, fully funded, feminist and forever. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Sofia Corti Oliveira and Mr. Ezekiel Nayarpo. On behalf of children and youth NGOs, you have the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, and fellow youths, we are Sofia Corradi from Brazil and Ezekiel Young from Liberia, delivering this statement on behalf of the children and youth. We stand in this room representing every geography, gender, race, and faith. As we advance the second week of COP28, we call for a shift in the current pace we are tackling the climate emergency. Youth have collectively volunteered 55,000 hours of work to deliver their demands on the Global Youth Statement. We ask you not to disregard our efforts, to listen to us, and to read the demands we are handing you throughout these decisive days. We also call for the creation of structural changes aimed at safeguarding children and equipping them with green skills, particularly throughout the Just Transition Work Program. We are pleased to see the focus on energy and the need to tackle our reliance on fossil fuels as the root cause of climate change in this year's global stocktake. We are therefore calling for a dedicated energy negotiations track at COP and for the final text to include commitments to tripling renewables by 2030 and transition to a just and equitable fossil fuel phase-out by 2050, accompanied by a significant decline in all fossil fuel production by 43% by 2030, taking into account global responsibility. The global stocktake decision should also commit to no investment, financing, permitting, and operationalization of new fossil fuel projects.
The global goal on adaptation must address local and regional realities. Therefore, we called for a double increase in grant-based adaptation finance for all countries, especially least developed countries and small island states. We acknowledge the existing environmental degradation due to slow action and non-existent implementation and highlight nature-based solutions and adaptation measures. In addition, we ask for the promotion of equality for all youth in spaces of advocacy and negotiation for the environment to build bridges between the UNFCCC, the UNCBD, and the Convention to Combat Desertification and the yet-to-be institutionalized water action agenda. We need an innovative approach to rethink how we work across these frameworks on climate, biodiversity, land use, and water. If this COP has made anything clear, It is that we need a commitment to transparency and processes on influence by actors that seek to undermine the pursuit of effective climate action. A common goal towards this must be achieved without any conflict of interest, including at the highest level of this process. We find ourselves in a crucial period of necessary transformation. Our duty as a society is to bridge a gap between the current state of the world and the ideal world we envision in the world we will live in. Considering the statement, we advocate for global peace and emphasize its role in fostering a prosperous planet, leaving no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Reverend Thompson Kariapa on behalf of faith-based organizations. You have the floor.
Mr. President, brothers and sisters, the world's faith communities are alarmed over the accelerating climate emergency. In our diversity of traditions, we share a common calling to heed the cries of the vulnerable, coming generations and Mother Earth. Human economic activity founded on the burning of fossil fuels is behind the climate crisis. May we act accordingly in line with science, responsibly and with urgency. If the world is to stay under 1.5 degrees Celsius, fossil fuels must be phased out now. A just transition must be pursued such that no community and no worker is left behind. We urge nations to rise above business and national interests, differences and conflicts, and commit to a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. The transition to an economy based on renewables must respect and protect the rights of Indigenous peoples. They are key to shifting narratives, worldviews, economic models and practices for a more sustainable Earth. While we welcome the decision at COP28 to operationalise the Loss and Damage Fund, we are disappointed by the pledges. It is important for the fund to address non-economic losses and damages, such as the erosion of cultures. Even if climate finance is pivotal for climate action, the drastic mitigation of emissions cannot be put on hold. To decolonise the mitigation agenda, nations that have historically benefited from and contributed the largest share of emissions must radically ramp up their nationally determined contributions. As faith communities, we cannot talk about Mother Earth and ignore the gender dimensions of climate change. Women's particular experiences can contribute to effective climate actions. Today, we stand in front of the biggest challenge humanity has ever faced. There is no time to lose. It is our moral obligation to act now and with greater aspiration to protect the gift of life on Earth. Therefore, we faith communities call on COP28 to deliver a plan to phase out fossil fuels rapidly, implement a just transition and endorse the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. Secure new, increased and needs-based funding for adaptation and loss and damage in the form of grants. Dismantle the doctrine of discovery and commit to rapid mitigation led by historically polluted nations. And recognise ecocide as a crime. Take into account Indigenous knowledge and practices for climate mitigation and adaptation.
We are disproportionately impacted by climate change. Women, children, youth with disabilities, and Indigenous peoples with disabilities are among those at greater risks. the number and diversity of people with disabilities attending climate change conference has been significantly increasing in recent years. Our participation is essential. It is not only a legal obligation under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the CRPD, but we bring unique experience and knowledge. A transition towards accessible and inclusive societies will strengthen the move towards resilience and sustainability for all. However, we are a long way from achieving this goal. As an example, 80% of state parties of the Paris Agreement do not include any reference to persons with disabilities in their national determined contributions, the NDC. We call on the Paris and the UNFCCC Secretariat to guarantee full and effective participation of persons with disabilities and their representative organization in UNFCCC processes and decisions. Secondly, we call on all the states to plan their NDCs in line with the human rights-based approach to disability and in consultation with persons with disabilities and their organizations. The third, regarding finance for loss and damage, we urge the allocation of specific funds as well as mainstreaming disability-related costs. And last but not least, also, this COP28 has shown some improvement regarding accessibility for participation. There are still major gaps. These include a lack of sign language interpretation and captioning, and lack of multiple formats for navigation, signage, and information. We demand action by UNFCCC and the COP presidency in line with their respective obligation under the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy and the UN CRPD to address these challenges. An all-of-society approach is required if climate action is too effective for everyone. Persons with disabilities look forward to being fully involved. It is important to have the persons with disabilities fully involved in the discussion about climate change, so we can contribute in this transversal strategy in order to do not leave anyone behind in order to achieve this change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, I thank all IGOs and NGOs for your statements. Distinguished delegates, this brings us to the end of the statements by IGOs and NGOs and the end of the resumed high-level segment. With this, I declare this joint meeting of the COP, CMP, and the CMA adjourned.
Me.